Hello, my name is Dan Meyer, editor-in-chief of RCR Wireless News. Thanks for joining us today. Today I am joined by Bill Ho, who is a longtime telecom analyst, been covering the wireless space for as long as there's been a wireless space, or so it seems. Bill, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
No problem. I'm always glad to talk to you, Dan.
So, hey, thanks. Well, I think today what we want to do is, I know about a month or so ago we talked, did a Google Hangout talking about carrier results from the, I believe, third quarter of last year. And now with the fourth quarter having all been reported by all the major carriers here domestically, was hoping to kind of catch up with you and get your insights into kind of what you saw from the results. Obviously the numbers are the numbers, and people can see those all they want. But I was hoping maybe for this to kind of get some insight from you on what the numbers might mean for some of the operators, any sort of challenges that they might be facing right now. So hopefully we can kind of, I guess, touch on some of those subjects if that works out for you.
Yeah, great.
Cool. Well, hey, we'll start out with the big guys. I mean, obviously, Verizon and AT&T are the two big players in the space, and they both posted pretty robust numbers for the quarter. Verizon more so, I think, than AT&T. I guess looking at how those guys are doing and kind of continue to do, how do you see? Do they just kind of stick to the status quo and just kind of keep it moving, or do you see any challenges for those guys going forward that they might have to maybe look out for?
I think Q4 surprised a lot of people in the dominance that Verizon had with 2.1 million postpaid and over 100,000 prepaid. So they're positive, and the gap is tremendous between them and AT&T. So AT&T got over 700,000, but 700,000 is pretty good, but it pales in comparison to 2.1 million postpaid. So that just says that Verizon's got a good marketing strategy. They got good distribution. The churn's low, and they're hitting all cylinders in terms of being a true competitor.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say that they can't do anything wrong, because obviously you can always have a problem here and there. But it does seem like that they just seem to be firing on all cylinders at this point. I mean, obviously with the growth, and I think just last week or this week, their Verizon CFO kind of mentioned that they're still looking for more net ad growth going forward. So they seem like they're comfortable and confident that what's gonna happen there.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of it has to do with the move to share plans. Not only is iPhone is a force, but the share plans allow building block for the future to add tablets and such. And for those people who they're trying to convert to smartphones and other devices, I think they found the secret sauce. They're first out of the gate first. AT&T reported good success also in the share plan, so that will probably be their driver. And then also in the future, to connect the cars, a lot of people talk about that they're working with the other car providers to just add that stuff into cars.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I guess maybe take the next step down then on the carrier ladder. Sprint and T-Mobile are still the nationwide number 2, 3, and 4 carriers, but obviously they're seeing some struggles there. What did you see from their quarter, and how can they, I guess, at some point turn this around? I mean, they seem to have been in a constant kind of reconfigure themselves or refine themselves for, it seems, a while now, and they still seem to be having difficulty getting traction there. How do you see those guys being able to turn around what are still kind of trying results?
Well, I think that Sprint's numbers are masked because of their the low number. What's really killed them is the Nextel. The Nextel decommissioning and getting all those guys off has really masked the net ads they have on their CDMA platform. So with them, they're on the rise. You said Nextel for the next couple of quarters is going to drag on them. So at least for T-Mobile's problem is that they need to stabilize their postpaid. They keep on losing a lot of postpaid, and they're offsetting with prepaid, but for the most part, they need to kind of contain those losses in the postpaid side. So that's their challenge right away.
Yeah, and it seems like too on the prepaid side, that's becoming much more competitive too. I mean, obviously, there's the guys, the Metros, the Leaps, the world who are are obviously struggling too in that space. But it seems like that the prepaid market is seeing a lot of interesting new entrants, whether it's a track phone or straight talk or whoever too. So to kind of be relying on that prepaid space seems a little tricky right now for T-Mobile at this point too.
Right. So I think the prepaid space as an entity is softening. So all the growth has always been the prepaid side for Sprint. A lot has to do with the Lifeline stuff that they were advocating. But for the most part, if you take a look at Leap and Metro, they lost, and that is a byproduct of competition. Interesting that they were very, very strong a couple of years ago. Now Verizon's adding positive net adds in the prepaid space, as well as T-Mobile. AT&T is down. So prepaid is softening. It's getting a lot more competitive simply because the introduction of the smartphone has killed, has forced a lot of subsidies, and it's gotten a lot competitive. And what's happening, I think, is that everybody's going for high value users. That means that they want to get their average revenue per user up, and that means really monthly plans, but albeit on a non-contract basis. And something about the prepaid sector is that as smartphones are typically unsubsidized, that means that's a high ticket item for that sector, which a majority of that demographic it's tough. Some can go for it, but it's kind of tough for the mainstream prepaid market.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, right. I mean, obviously, Leap it sounds like at least recently that they've kind of talked about the fact that they're having trouble selling their iPhones and some of the higher end devices too. So and subsidy is obviously a difficult part for them financially. So that's a bit of a struggle. And I mean, at least it seems like for Metro, they at least have an out at this point with the T-Mobile deal. If that goes through, they've got somewhat of an out there. Leap seems like they're kind of still out there. Hopefully, I don't know if they're looking for a way out at some point or what their plans are. But you're right. I mean, they've been struggling growth-wise, and their business model, whether it's smartphones, whatever, seems to be taxing them financially at this point too.
Yeah. So with Leap, they were the biggest losers. They had over 300,000 losses, and it's interesting that they are focusing in on the monthly plans. In the future, they are kind of not discarding, but de-emphasizing the pay-as-you-go and the mobile broadband plans. So and we learned today that DOJ gave the thumbs up to T-Mobile and Metro PCS today. So from the prepaid future, that's going to be interesting for the NewCo, as the combination of Metro PCS and T-Mobile. So T-Mobile right now is about 70% postpaid. After the get-together with Metro, they're going to be about 45% prepaid. So that has implications on T-Mobile's, future competitive. Will they dominate prepaid? Prepaid is typically lower in terms of average revenue per user, and churn is higher in the prepaid space. So in looking forward for T-Mobile, once it gets together with Metro PCS, it'll be interesting to see how they attack prepaid. We know that already, that they talked about different segments to target. So they have flanker brands that they just launched. So to some extent, it's kind of the same way that Sprint is approaching their prepaid space.
Yeah, it definitely seems like going forward, you're right. That prepaid space is not going to get any less competitive, that's for sure. And at least on the postpaid side, I mean, with Verizon dominating like they are, it seems like most of the carriers are having to look at that prepaid space for any sort of growth going forward. So that's going to be interesting to watch, right? How that all plays out. And again, with Leap, with them struggling as well, potentially, they've got some valuable spectrum, obviously. So there could be there's some value still in Leap, but at least competitive-wise, they have their work cut out for them. At least for the next 6 months or so.
Yeah. I think of all the carriers that we talked about, Leap is by far the most challenged.
Yeah. And now, what about, I guess, even the smaller, taking the next step down, like the U.S. Cellulars of the world, and they seem like they're still kind of finding their place out there. I mean, they're still plugging along. I know U.S. Cellular last year struck a pretty big deal, spectrum deal with Sprint to sell off some of their markets. But it still seems like they're finding kind of a way to stay relevant in the market, whether it's changing market focus or or different customer segments. For some of those smaller guys, what's your view on how they can continue to remain a compelling ongoing service out there?
Well, it's interesting because U.S. Cellular is getting out basically in really, really competitive markets where the margins are less. So it's the bigger markets, St. Louis, Chicago. They have actively gotten out, and their core markets are smaller tier markets where they have higher profitability. And one of the things that they worry about, I think, at least the analyst side, have asked them about carrying the iPhone. So they are adamant that their existing strategy of really not using the iPhone, which is a high churn, a low churn, a churn reduction tool, is there. But I guess in the business case that it's just too taxing, and they're kind of keeping it at bay. So this quarter they continue to lose. They've been losing postpaid users for many quarters. It's kind of tough. It's an interesting strategy to raise cash through spectrum sale and selling off markets to Sprint. So that's their attack, and in 13 we'll see what happens if they continue to lose and the rate of loss.
Yeah, well, that sounds good. Well, Bill, again, appreciate the time today. Thanks so much for kind of updating us on what you saw from the quarterly results. And obviously, it seems like a lot of the same still happening, but it's good to kind of get some insight on kind of what how these numbers might impact these carriers going forward. So definitely appreciate the time today.
Hey, always glad to help.